I understand there's been a significant NHS pilot study recently, published in the journal Alimentary Pharmacology and Therapeutics.
The study aimed to evaluate capsule endoscopy safety, accuracy and utility in this setting. There were no tubes, no sedation needed, making it much less invasive and safer than traditional colonoscopy.
Does finding any polyp mean the patient needs an urgent colonoscopy?
Well, this is the crucial question. It's widely accepted that colorectal cancers arise from polyps, but remember that most colorectal polyps are benign and will never develop into cancer.
Well, this traffic light system, based on the data we've discussed, seems like a very practical way to utilise colon capsule. What was the actual impact on urgent colonoscopy demand in the NHS pilot study?
The impact was truly significant. As I mentioned, 86% of patients were spared urgent colonoscopy for suspected colorectal cancer.
Welcome back to our podcast series, where we explore big ideas in digestive health in a down-to-earth way. Today, we're diving into something truly fascinating: how a tiny camera in a pill might just revolutionise how we screen for bowel cancer, and crucially, how we decide who really needs a traditional colonoscopy. Joining me today is Professor Owen Epstein, a leading gastroenterologist and one of the UK's foremost experts in colon capsule endoscopy. Professor Epstein, thanks for being here today.
Tim, it's a great pleasure. This is really such an important topic to cover, particularly in this era where bowel cancer screening is becoming more important in terms of our public health problems.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with the big picture: colorectal cancer. Bowel cancer. It's a major health challenge globally and a leading cause of cancer-related death. We know that most cases arise from what were once benign polyps. Finding and removing these polyps early is key to preventing cancer, and that screening programs have made a real difference in reducing mortality. Current screening often involves tests like fecal immunochemical testing, otherwise known as FIT or FIT, which looks for hidden blood in stool. A positive FIT often leads to a recommendation for a colonoscopy.
That's right, Tim. And while colonoscopy is the gold standard for diagnosing polyps and early cancer, allowing for immediate removal, it has its limitations as a primary screening tool for everyone. It requires a significant amount of preparation. Many patients opt for sedation during the procedure, and the procedure itself carries a small risk of complications. Rare, but complications like perforation or bleeding. Colonoscopy is very resource intensive, and having said that, polyps can be missed even by the most experienced colonoscopists. This is where the challenge lies, particularly with the growing number of patients who have a slightly raised FIT result of between 10 and 100 micrograms of hemoglobin per gram of feces. They aren't clearly very low risks, but they don't necessarily need urgent investigation based on the FIT test alone. This group presents a clinical grey zone.
So how can colon capsule endoscopy, or CCE, help navigate this grey zone? I understand there's been a significant NHS pilot study recently, published in the journal Alimentary Pharmacology and Therapeutics.
Yes, this was a really large multi-centre study across 55 NHS trusts in England, introduced at scale during the COVID-19 pandemic to support endoscopy recovery and recruiting over 10,000 symptomatic patients with a FIT of 100 or less. Half opted for capsule and the remainder traditional colonoscopy. The study aimed to evaluate capsule endoscopy safety, accuracy and utility in this setting. Think of capsule endoscopy as swallowing a camera in a pill. It takes thousands of images as it travels through your bowel, and this provides a video record for clinicians to review. There are no tubes, no sedation needed, making it much less invasive and safer than traditional colonoscopy.
And what did this large NHS study find?
The headline findings is that colon capsule endoscopy helped avoid urgent colonoscopy in 86% of patients on the suspected colorectal cancer pathway with an FIT of less than 100. For patients in the FIT grey zone, the pilot showed that CCE confidently filtered patients, identifying those needing urgent colonoscopy and allowing others to be safely managed via lower risk pathways or even discharged.
And what about safety?
CCE was found to be very safe, with no serious adverse reactions due to the capsule. And it identified all patients with colorectal cancer referred for follow-on colonoscopy when the examination was complete and adequately prepared. Capsule endoscopy also detected more polyps overall, and specifically more polyps in the greater than 10 millimeter and the 6 to 9 millimeter size ranges compared to colonoscopy or CT colonography. This again relates to complete and adequate examinations.
So detecting polyps is one thing, but what about their clinical significance? Does finding any polyp mean the patient needs an urgent colonoscopy?
Well, this is the crucial question, and where data from other studies has to be brought in. It's widely accepted that colorectal cancers arise from polyps, but remember that most colorectal polyps are benign and will never develop into cancer. A key factor determining the clinical significance of a polyp is currently thought to be its size. So let's focus on polyps under 10 millimeters, often subdivided into diminutive, that's less than 5 millimeter, and small, that's 6 to 9 millimeter polyps. Data from studies evaluating polyps removed during colonoscopy consistently show exceedingly low and even non-existent rates of precancerous changes like high-grade dysplasia amongst these sub-centimeter polyps.
Can you elaborate?
For instance, a large study by Punagotti et al., which evaluated over 40,000 sub-centimeter polyps removed during colonoscopy, found 0 cancers in the sample of 36,000 diminutive polyps measuring 1 to 5 millimeters in size and 6,500 small polyps measuring 6 to 9 millimeters. Rates of advanced histology, such as villus component or high-grade dysplasia or invasive cancer, was exceedingly low, approximately 0.3% for diminutive adenomas, and that equates to roughly 108 out of 36,000, and 0.8% for small adenomas, or about 52 out of 6,500.
Well, 0 cancers in over 40,000 sub-centimeter polyps is a powerful statistic. But if left in place, is there still a significant risk that these polyps will develop into cancer?
Well, this is where longitudinal data tells us about the natural history of polyps. Studies using CT colonography surveillance of unresected polyps have provided very valuable insights. These studies show that while these small polyps can grow, the likelihood of growth and progression to cancer is really very low. And modeling based on this data suggests that surveillance of small polyps is a reasonable strategy from both a clinical and economic perspective. In fact, the CT colonography mantra that's been evolved is this: ignore the tiny, watch the small, but remove the large. Of interest is that this review indicated that even polyps measuring 1 to 2 centimeters generally show relatively indolent growth patterns.
So, if the risk of cancer in small polyps is so low, both initially and over time, what does that mean for the traditional approach of removing every polyp found during a colonoscopy?
Yeah, it highlights the inefficiencies of a universal polypectomy strategy. Removing every polyp, especially diminutive and small ones, leads, in my judgment, to excessive resource utilization, great cost, and an increase in the number of potential complications associated with the procedure. Decision analysis models help quantify this. One model, looking at CT colonography findings, estimated the number of polypectomies needed to prevent a single colon cancer over a 10-year period. And they estimated that 2,352 polypectomies of diminutive polyps and 297 polypectomies of small polyps would be required to prevent just one colon cancer developing over 10 years. Now contrast this with large polyps, those 1 centimetre or greater, where only 10.7 polypectomies were estimated to prevent one colorectal cancer over 10 years. So this data strongly suggests that focusing resources on the larger, higher risk polyps is a far more effective use of limited colonoscopy capacity.
Well, this makes a lot of sense. And this data on polyp risk stratification directly informs how colon capsule endoscopy as a filter can be used. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Colon capsule is an excellent tool to perform a filter function in the suspected colorectal cancer pathway. Based on polyp size and other characteristics identified by camera capsule, we can make informed decisions about onward management and referral.
Can you elaborate?
This is my idea. We can think of this as using a traffic light system for onward referral, building on the risk stratification data. So if the capsule video is normal or detects only these tiny diminutive polyps, which, to remind you, are those 5 millimeters or less in size, these patients can be given a green light and I think be safely discharged because they're of extremely low risk of cancer progression. If the capsule detects small polyps, those between 6 and 9 millimeters, based on the natural history data showing slow growth and low malignancy risk, these patients are indeed at low risk, and these can be designated an amber light and referred down a non-urgent pathway for follow-up. This low-risk setting provides an opportunity to downgrade them from the urgent colonoscopy pathway and allows the clinician to personalize non-urgent management, considering the low risk with other factors such as age, comorbidities, current drug therapies, and, of course, patient anxiety. But, of course, if the capsule detects large polyps, those 1 centimeter or larger, or lesions suspicious for cancer, these patients need a prioritized red light for highest risk and referred for prioritized traditional colonoscopy for polypectomy or biopsy.
Well, this traffic light system, based on the data we've discussed, seems like a very practical way to utilize colon capsule. What was the actual impact on urgent colonoscopy demand in the NHS pilot study?
The impact was truly significant. As I mentioned, 86% of patients were spared urgent colonoscopy for suspected colorectal cancer. In addition, as many as those requiring more urgent referral revealed abnormalities in the left colon. Many only required a flexible sigmoidoscopy for further management.
Well, there must be downsides as well as the advantages.
Yeah, sure. In the pilot, colon capsule endoscopy completion rates were reported at 74%, and bowel preparation adequacy rates at about 74% as well, which are poorer than colonoscopy, where these rates are 88%. But capsules still usefully performed a filter function in the majority of patients. And most important, as individuals' experience grows, we expect that capsule completion rates and bowel prep adequacy will improve shortly to match colonoscopy.
So how would you sum up the outcome of this large real-world study?
Tim, the study demonstrated that in the suspected bowel cancer screening pathway, colon capsules filter function complements existing services by creating additional capacity. It allows us to use the more invasive, resource-intensive colonoscope where it's truly needed, and that is for higher risk findings, while redirecting most lower risk patients appropriately away from the urgent endoscopy pathway.
That's incredibly interesting. It sounds like colon capsule endoscopy, combined with a risk stratified approach based on the robust data about polyp size and risk, offers a safe and effective way to improve efficiency in bowel cancer screening programs.
Precisely, Tim. It's really not about replacing colonoscopy, but using capsule endoscopy as a smart filter to ensure that the right patient gets the right test at the right time, reducing unnecessary invasive procedures and freeing up valuable colonoscopy slots for those who truly need them urgently. This pragmatic NHS study, along with a wealth of data on polyp natural history, provides strong evidence for this sort of approach.
Professor Epstein, thank you so much for sharing this important information and helping us understand how colon capsule endoscopy and data can shape the future of bowel cancer screening and offer individuals a gentler and more personalised experience.
It's a pleasure, Tim.